737 Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on into your Tuesday, July 23rd. So, moving the whole debate about where the heck is Joe and is he alive or dead, that's going to be a conversation that continues. A lot of people are actually demanding proof of life as it relates to Joe Biden. But putting that aside, there's no doubt now that Kamala Harris is going to be the nominee for the Democrats. And yesterday was really an insight as to what her plan of attack is going to be. And yes, she played the obvious card, calling Donald Trump a predator.
In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women. Fraudsters who ripped off consumers. Cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. And in this campaign, I will proudly put my record against his.
Our old friend Matt Bassett is joining us once again. Matt, the political season is heating up. You used to work in the Trump administration. You've done some fill-in work here on WTN and a lot of analysis for yours truly. Welcome back to Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt, how are you?
I'm great, Dan. Good to be with you in a very fluid political time.
Absolutely. Now, Kamala Harris, I just played the audio bite. She was talking about her role in California as a district attorney and an attorney general. And, you know, she's basically calling Donald Trump, of course, all of these horrific things. And she talks about how she'll put her record against Donald Trump's any day of the week. Interestingly enough, though, Matt, there was no mention of her record as Biden's border czar, or about their failure on the world stage, about the fentanyl coming across our southern border. Nothing about that, just all about how, you know, Donald Trump is a predator and a crook.
Yeah, there are not a lot of things in politics that surprise me, Dan, but I was really taken aback when it seemed that she was consolidating the nomination so quickly. And I reached out to Democratic friends and said, are you guys happy with Harris? And was very surprised when they said yes, and they believe this gives them the best chance to be competitive with Donald Trump. I just want to point out that the so-called party of democracy, who keeps saying what a threat Trump is, deposed their own sitting president and put in his place someone who's never received any primary votes. And when she did try and compete, it was a complete and total disaster. I want to remind people that she was the first person that washed out of the Democratic primary, and they wanted to have nothing to do with her. And now she is the most far-left politician that the Democrats have ever run.
Matt, do you think that, I mean, that clearly when she calls Donald Trump a predator and all of those other things, is that an indicator, do you believe, since that is her opening salvo, that that's the tone and the tenor that they're going to take throughout the next several months?
Well, absolutely, because they cannot run on their record. I would have thought they would have replaced her with a popular Democratic governor, i.e. Pennsylvania or North Carolina or Kentucky. Mm-hmm. But yet they chose to run her, and she is completely complicit with all of the failures of the Biden administration. And since you started on the border, let's start there with our so-called border czar, who had one job that they announced to the press, and in that job, she let in between 10 and 20 million illegal aliens that are committing crimes all over this country. I mean, this is a person who, in her previous statements, has called for abolishing ICE.
Yeah.
She has not met any. She detests the police. She detests law enforcement. She was someone who, after the BLM riots, said we don't need more police and more police don't make you safe. So I think the problem that they have is her radical left record. And they're going to do everything they can to gloss over that and to make it about Donald Trump. But I think people need to listen to what she has said in the past and believe her. I mean, Joe Biden read whatever they wrote on the teleprompter, and he was useful for them while he was doing that. But he has very fluid political beliefs. He believes this radical left stuff to her core. Just ask her.
Well, and remember when she was on, you mentioned this earlier, where Kenosha was burning. Remember this? And she ends up on, and this was happening all across the country. And Kamala Harris is on late night TV with Stephen Colbert, and she said this.
But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And they're not, this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not. And
remember, and I talked about this a lot back when this was going on, that when Colbert mentioned that there was some protests or rioting or whatever was going on in Kenosha, however he described it, her face, she started beaming as people were dying and businesses and homes and cars were being burned and destroyed and cops are being attacked. And she thought it was the greatest thing ever. She also, as you know, Matt, I've talked about this many times, she advocated for the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which put murderers and rapists back on the street. Some of them went back out and killed people. So as they're trying to make Kamala Harris, I spoke way earlier in the program about how they're trying to rebrand her as from cringe to cool. I mean, whatever, but she can't run from these comments or the things that she's done or not done within the Biden administration.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to me that they selected her for the nominee. And, you know, the mainstream media is going to do everything they can to gloss over her record and to build her up. But she is going to have to talk, and she's going to have to debate Donald Trump. I mean, that is going to be like the Super Bowl of politics to watch that. And I just don't know how she is going to explain the dismal record that they have had. You know, the border was one piece, but the thing that led to all this inflation and all the sky-high prices people are paying is their disastrous energy policies. And she is going to have to own that and explain why she likes gas being as high-priced as it is. And that is really that, and their tremendous amount of spending is what has hurt American consumers and all of these American families who are having to pay these exorbitant high prices. And it is going to be a lot of fun watching her try and defend those policies that she would continue if she got anywhere near the Oval Office.
Playing some select audio bites from Kamala Harris and her accusations yesterday against Donald Trump.
This team here that is going to help in this November to elect a majority of members of the United States Congress who agree the government should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. And when Congress passes a law to restore reproductive freedoms, as President of the United States, I will sign it into law.
All right, so, of course, they're bringing up Roe versus Wade, and as Matt, you and I both know, it went back down to the states, which is where it's supposed to go constitutionally. But, I mean, abortion, talking about what the Harris campaign can do, the only thing they can really do is talk about abortion, because as you and I were discussing, they really don't have much else.
No, they don't. And let's just put them side by side. President Trump is promising to bring back a booming economy, a secure border, and a reduction in crime. And he has considerable credibility because that's what he did as president of the United States. And we move to the other side. They can't touch any of those, including energy policy, where Trump had us energy independent and gas at $2.17, when he left office, and we were a net exporter of energy to our friends around the globe. What do they have to run on? Radical abortion policies and racial division and grievances.
Yep.
I think this is a pretty good matchup.
I do think it is as well. And speaking of which, I do have one more audio bite for you where Kamala Harris, now remember the cut that I just played for you folks a few minutes ago, where she was talking about how the Summer of Love, the George Floyd riots should not stop. The protests and the riots and all the burning and all, it should not stop. And they will not stop. I want you to remember that because this is what Kamala Harris yesterday said about Donald Trump.
So ultimately, to all the friends here, I say, in this election, we know we each face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? A country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law?
Yes!
Or a country of chaos, fear, and hate?
No!
So in the next 106 days, we have work to do. We have doors to knock on. We have people to talk to. We have phone calls to make. And we have an election to win.
I mean, she sounds like a mix between Nikki Haley and that attorney, the attorney general out of New York, Letitia James. So it's kind of like a mix between those two.
Well, I think Nikki Haley, while she wouldn't have been my choice, would be a viable national candidate, where Kamala Harris really is not. And again, the press is going to do everything they can to say how close this race is. And I don't want anybody to get complacent, and all of Trump Nation needs to be very vigilant, and they need to vote early, and we need to do the things that we need to do on the ground to win this election. But I think at the end of the day, come election night, this is going to look like a Pollock painting, and there's just going to be red splattered everywhere. I think that they are going to long for the days of Michael Dukakis after this campaign.
All right, Matt, anything else? We've got about 45 seconds left. Anything you want to say at the tail end of this conversation?
I think we just need to listen to the candidates and believe what they have said in the past and what they say they are going to do. And I think Americans want to get back to normalcy.
Yep.
I think they want to protect women's sports, which she will be adamantly against. And I think we're going to get back to we have a chance to have a generational change of leadership where we move this country forward, we get back to a booming economy, and we get back to safe cities. And I think Donald Trump, after coming out of the strongest convention I have ever seen in my lifetime, is set up to have a very, very good next 100 days.